Welcome to Breaking Initiative. Don't forget to like and subscribe down below. Also comment. That would be great as well. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and probably wherever the heck you're listening to. My name is Brett.
And I'm Rob. This is the show where we take our own tips and tricks about your favorite tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons and whatnot. And we give you some news from around the web, around the community, tips and tricks, talk about some of our stories from the past, kind of mix it all into one big old soup.
Yep.
Brett, I am going to shoot you.
Wait.
With a gun. This is a robbery. I'm here to take all of your stuff. You've let me into your house.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do about it? Nothing, because I have a gun.
Are we talking about Gunslinger today, Rob?
No, actually, I'm really, no. But my point being...
Defense, it's Florida.
There's something... Oh, we're steering away from that topic.
Sorry,
no politics.
No politics. This is stupid. This is being dumb.
Yeah. Stand your ground. No, no, sorry. No, stop it. We're talking about not necessarily just Gunslinger, but using guns in Dungeons and Dragons.
Not just Gunslinger.
And I used that scenario a second ago that I thoughtfully crafted to explain that with using guns, there's a certain kind of fantasy to it, and it's almost like a sort of power fantasy of you're upping the ante. This is something that ended the need for swords in the Middle Ages, like in real history. People just stopped using them; they became obsolete.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But Mythbuster did bust it. If within 15 feet, I believe a knife and a gun are equal, or a knife with. I mean, it all probably depends on the person, but it was like if they're both of equal skill level. We're talking about military, I think, or something like that.
Yes, you can deflect bullets with a sword, like Star Wars.
That's exactly.
Proven. I'm not even going to watch it. I know that's what they proved.
I know. That's
Slice
exactly
it in
what
half.
they did. Yep.
Yeah.
And then another one caught a bullet. Caught a bullet. Is that too far? Political? Is that also racist?
Stupid.
It's Jackie Chan. Anyways.
Yeah, so that's actually going to lead into something I wanted to talk about, surprisingly. Yeah. When we get to monks and deflect bullets and missiles or whatever. I'm pretty sure it works on bullets. But anyway, we'll get to that.
It does work on bullets.
Yeah. Well, it's just... Using guns brings up one thing in mind for everybody that's playing D&D 5th edition, and that is the one that Matt Mercer is given credit for creating, a class that is the Gunslinger. And a lot of people use this in their campaigns, even Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
It's one of the classes that you're encouraged to use for, like, if you're setting it in Exandria, because they actually have gunslingers in their lore of their world.
Well, so not fully.
Not fully.
Percy was the inventor of the gun.
Right, so now it exists.
Correct. So if you fast forward maybe a couple hundred years, then sure, but it's still not everywhere.
Right.
There was one gun in Campaign 2.
Right.
Which actually it really does tackle both things we're talking about, is how we decide we're going to deal with guns if one of our characters want to play a gunslinger, compared to also if nobody plays a gunslinger, then how does a gun come involved? Is it in there? What do we do with it? Is it magical? Is it not magical?
I don't even personally use the gunslinger as a class that I offer to my players when I DM. There's ways to go around using it. But first, before we move into that stuff, because there's rules in the actual DMG, the Dungeon Master's Guide on how to use guns in your campaign, it's kept away from the player's handbook because it changes the scope of the world so much to introduce it. But like we have a gunslinger player in one of our campaigns. We've talked about a few times. It can feel a little broken if it's like somebody who likes to min-max that's playing it. And there's certain feats that kind of stack on top of it.
But I was there in the beginning.
Right.
The Gunslinger, if we could talk about this really quick. The Gunslinger as a class, in the beginning, it was you pull the trigger, you miss, you did nothing, And sometimes when it would break, and that was a chance, and that did happen, then it's like it's multiple rounds you're doing nothing because you have to use all of everything to just fix it to maybe get another shot out. Like, really, it was something that was not very strong in the beginning, to where there's even kind of a running joke from some of us that were there at the beginning of like, you know, hey, remember when you did nothing and you finally showed up? Like, that's pretty much what happened, where it was pretty weak in the beginning, and just, it was okay. It was like he had a bow, but he missed so much more, and there was a chance the bow was going to break. And that's just not really something that happens. And but eventually, you know, we got to, I don't know, level 4, 5, 6, something like that, moved up a little bit. It then started to take the turn of like, oh, how do we just keep helping him shoot and kill more things at a distance, and like he's just taking things off. Oh, I'm a monk, I'm gonna go over there and deal with this guy. Oh yeah, he just turns and moves the scope towards that guy. I had him. Thought I all right, thanks.
So yeah, the gunslinger class is designed to take away some of the limitations that are built into the base game about using guns. Also, there are some alternate guns that are presented in some of the expanded books for the Exandria settings that kind of also make guns more powerful. And you combine everything you can get from all these different sources with like sharpshooter and also the gunner feat, and now they've added more stuff to make it. You can really bog this character down with just min-max hell, basically.
Yes.
This is a problem that happened. This is what killed 3rd edition, really, was taking things from all these different sources and combining them together, because it became so long in its lifespan that you could make, by the time they introduced Warlock, they called it spell-like abilities, and then there was another book in the Book of Vile Darkness that had spell-like ability stuff that was for monster feats, but now there's players that can get monster feats, and so you combine them together, and it just breaks the game. That's kind of what's happened with the Gunslinger, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we're kind of stuck with it. A lot of people thinking it's a base class, but there's ways to use guns.
So here's a thing that is a little bit of a hidden secret that we don't think about Matt Mercer. We think of, oh, great storyteller, great, creating classes, all these things. One thing that puts him ahead of, I think, a lot of people as well that we don't think about is the way he balances combat. Yes, sometimes people get in there, they just roll over stuff. Sometimes they get in there and they have no idea what to do. But with having a gunslinger in campaign 1, he balanced it pretty well. You know, it was sometimes it was easy. Sometimes it was like on 1 or 2 rolls and then chaos is happening if these go bad or something like that. So he does a really good job balancing the encounters. So you can have almost a broken player, but if the DM's balancing with that and kind of, dealing with that as the party is, you can still have fun. So
right. Yes, agreed. And also, even though I don't allow my players to play the Gunslinger, I actually kind of like it. I really like it. I like cowboys. It's a cool fantasy. Each class should fulfill a certain fantasy archetype, and that really fills in this really interesting niche of just old cowboy movies. The Desperado.
Ninjas and pirates.
There's ninjas, pirates. We need cowboys.
Yeah, and then there's and then everything else is fantasy and monks.
Yeah,
it's like
and it's it does some cool stuff. And the whole idea of grit, it almost tells a specific story about what kind of character this is. The downside is it encourages players to feel like everyone else shouldn't be using guns. The guns are for the gunslinger. And there's something that I've been experimenting for a while for like a campaign setting I'm building, and if you're setting something in a modern setting or like a Renaissance setting or something that's trying to evoke like a sort of like the game's Fable, if you've played Fable 2, Fable 3, where the technology has kind of come forward a little bit.
A little steampunkish.
Yes, it starts to get into this setting where guns and swords are kind of side by side. You can use the rules straight out of the books, and instead of making it something you have to learn, now it's something in the world that everybody knows, like of them. People that it's just a martial weapon. Anybody who is proficient with martial weapons, I make the exclusion of barbarians just because it makes sense. They can use martial weapons. You don't have to. But in my settings, I always say everybody who knows martial weapons except for barbarians is automatically
use a bow.
Yes, they can use a longbow.
Oh,
because they're proficient with
martial weapons.
Right.
Just never saw that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about it. They're tribal and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, makes sense. Like, but I just wonder.
And if you're playing a certain role where, like, even the native tribes around the world started to adopt rifles and guns and things. It kind of makes sense if you want to include it in your world for that. It depends how you want to build your world, but just make it a martial weapon. And you'll see everyone can use it. They're already designed if you look in page, it's like around 268. They have all of the guns, the firearms, as they're listed in the Dungeon Master's Guide, listed in there. They have the reload feature, which can sometimes take extra time to reload the weapon, which limits you in a way. Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't necessarily always use this gun. And it can misfire, forcing you to switch to just like the real pirates in real life. Yeah. Their gun misfired. Sometimes they had a necklace with 3 flintlock pistols. So they just blast and blast and blast. And now they're in their swords, right? That's just dynamic combat. That's cool. I like that. I want them to use the gun some and then switch to something else. That's neat.
Yeah.
But you can just push that out into the world and use the feats that support that. If you want your character you want to have a rogue be sort of like a highwayman, right? Like, that's a neat archetype that's not really fulfilled anywhere, but any rogue would fit that if they took the gunner feat from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which eliminates some of it does some of the stuff that the Gunslinger does. It takes away some of the misfire chances and stuff like that, and does things that the crossbow expert does, but for guns. Before that existed, I just made crossbow expert work for guns.
Yeah.
Technically, it doesn't. Especially,
and also I think the gunslinger feat, the gunner feat, is a half feat, right? You also get a plus to dexterity.
Do you?
I believe
you do.
Right.
Yes, and it does the thing where you ignore well, no, that's with the sharpshooter, right? So, and then you combine that with sharpshooter. Now it's not unbalanced. You just get all that cool stuff we talked about, and you get your rogue abilities. Or you could be a freaking gunslinging wizard, right? Yeah. That's neat.
I mean, just if you had a campaign to where you're the DM and the party's there, and nobody's a gunslinger, then it's now what happens? I put a gun there. Look, you go through this and you find a gun. You find a gun with 4 bullets. Who's going to take it? What are they going to do? Are they going to now build off of it? Or maybe they don't do anything with it. I mean, I know not in, campaign 2, it was like a 2-time or 3-time situation. And it was none of it was used for strategy in any way more than just comedy. And it was really funny. But yeah, I think that can, if you have nobody that is a gunslinger, I think that is a cool thing to see what's going to happen.
Right. And you put things in their way. People that are just let me think, not necessarily a fighter, like a bard, right? A bard that's using a gun. You put that in your world to show them you can be any character and just use guns.
Yeah.
I just named 3 classes that don't have the martial, all proficiency with all martial weapons.
But would they get the gunner feat?
If they get the gunner feat, they then become proficient with it as well. So anybody can do it as long as they take that feat, and that's just neat. It's way cooler to me than a class. So that's the only. It's not because I don't like the gunslinger. It's because I like seeing people try to break out of that one mold that everybody does and see just a world where guns exist.
It's the gunslinger is for I think a worked, a DM that is really going to pay attention, because it's a third party character. I mean, it's Critical Role's. It's not D&D. It's not officially from Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
And it's built for Matt Mercer.
Right.
Who is going to spend the time and know what the situation they're getting into, and his job is to create these awesome encounters that pretty much is not going to make things too out of bounds. So it takes more work.
Yeah, let's go ahead and end it there. I hope that helps somebody out. Brett, you have anything to add?
No, I think it's all good. I just think Gunslinger take a little more effort, but also it just reminds me of like throwing like a piece of candy on like an anthill, where you're like, they all go crazy, see what happens. That's the visual that I got.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys in the next one.
See you.